Right, thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. If you don't know me already, my name is Magnus Nielsen and I'm a Ripper researcher. And what I'm doing at the present moment is going around places in Whitechapel talking about the murders that took place in the August, September, October, November of 1888. The murders that were committed by this individual known to history as Jack the Ripper. In the present moment, I'm in a place called Altab Ali Park. Can you see it? Yes, you can. And what I propose to do now is move out of the park, and I'm going to make my way down Whitechapel High Street, and I'm going to be talking about the first, what I believe to be the first murder, to be that of a lady called Martha. So what I'm now doing is making my way outside the park. Over on my right hand side I have Whitechapel Road, which then merges straight into Whitechapel High Street directly ahead of us. Right, so Martha Tabram. Now Martha Tabram was born in May of 1849. She was the daughter of a man called Charles White, who was the manager of a local warehouse. I say local, they lived in Southwark, about half a mile due south of London Bridge. So Martha grew up as a child in Southwark, and at the age of 20, this would have been in 1869, she married a man called Henry Tabram, who worked as a furniture packer. So she settled down and she produced at the end two sons, and then Martha's problem, and indeed this was a common problem with the victims in this story, is that they had a susceptibility to alcohol. In fact, that's true, as I say, that's true of all of them. But Martha couldn't take very much alcohol, and it became a problem. So in the end, Henry and Martha separated. This would have been in 1875. This would be about 5 years after the marriage. And Martha then went off. What Henry did was give Martha an allowance, something to live on, but inevitably she found another man, a man called Henry Turner. Henry Turner was a hawker. That meant to say that he sold odd items to passers-by in the street. He'd also do any little odd jobs in carpentry that may be available. But anyway, he and Martha were together for about 10 years or so. They had an on-off relationship, which more or less fell apart around about January of 1888. And the very last time that Henry Turner saw Martha was on Saturday, the 4th of August, and that was down at Aldgate Pump. What I'm doing is I'm walking down the south side of Whitechapel High Street, and I'm looking in that direction. Since I've got the green light, I'm going to cross the road now while I've got the opportunity and make my way to the other side of the street. So this is Whitechapel High Street, ladies and gentlemen. As I turn around to the north side, you can see the White Hart, and you can also see Burger King. Now Burger King now occupies the premises that was once occupied by a very prestigious Jewish restaurant called Bloom's, a very famous place in the early 20th century, in fact right through till around about 1990 when it closed down through lack of support, really, I suppose, from the local Jewish community. This was a very, very heavily populated Jewish area at the time of the Ripper murders. There were something like over 30,000 Jewish people living in Whitechapel and Spitalfields, out of a total population of 80,000. So They were quite numerous. And as we cross over the road now, you can see, actually overhead and then to your left hand side is Gunthorpe Street. I'll be going there, but you'll also see this. Now this is a telltale. This is something which I don't know I can interpret it. Obviously Jewish. No doubt some Jewish person more knowledgeable than I can tell me exactly what it is. I'm assuming that it's the site of a kosher butchery. Could be wrong on that, but anyway, that's what I think it is. Now, Martha Tabram. Let's get back to her. As I say, she met Henry Turner at Aldgate on Saturday, the 4th of August. She got 1 shillings and 6pence, and that was a Saturday. The Sunday is the Sabbath. Nothing much is happening on the Sabbath. And then the Monday, the 6th of August, is the Bank Holiday Monday. And Bank Holiday was a big deal in Victorian times. Working people worked very long hours. They had to start early, work late. They often had to work on Saturday mornings as well as Monday through to Friday. So they treasured any leisure time they had. And there were 4 Mondays in the year called bank holidays. Those were days when the banks closed. And because the banks had closed, the factories, the shops, the offices had also closed, and all their staff were given a day off. And the only people remaining open would be the pubs and the music halls and the theatres, so you could still entertain yourself. So, anyway, that was Monday the 6th. So, Martha met up with a lady calling herself Pearly Poll. Her real name was Mary Ann Connolly. And by this time, Martha was calling herself Emma. She was living in Whitechapel in the common lodging houses and supporting herself through prostitution. And she decided to go along with Pearly Poll as a form of joint enterprise. Anyway, at 6 in the evening, Martha and Pearly Poll met up in a pub called the White Swan, which has since been pulled down. But looking around here, further down the road, see the site where that big red bus is. That would have been where the White Swan was. Anyway, they were there pretty well all evening. They picked up 2 guardsmen. One was a corporal and one was a private. And then they spent the rest of the evening with them. And then they got together, and by around about 1:45, and we're talking what, 11:45, somewhere around about that time, they were back here in Whitechapel High Street, all 4 of them, deciding what to do and where to go. And the long and the short of it is that Mary Connolly took her up Angel Alley. This is Angel Alley. And Martha took her private up Gunthorpe Street. And that's where I'm heading at the present moment, ladies and gentlemen. Gunthorpe Street used to be called George Yard in the 1880s. And it's named after a man called Gunthorpe, who was a rector at the Church of St Mary Matfelon. Now then, this is Gunthorpe Street. And walking up here, we are actually walking over the same paving stones, the same sets that were laid down, would have been sometime in the Victorian period, I would guess, but we're walking over the same stones that Jack the Ripper and Martha Tabram walked as Martha made her way further forward up to George Yard buildings. At the present moment we're heading in a northerly direction. Now, London at that time had a population of 5 million people, and it was growing, expanding, and there's a great deal of pressure on accommodation. Not easy to find places to live. It's still the case, I regret to say. However, some people, charitable people, were alive to this problem, and they would start building affordable accommodation for the respectable poor. What they meant is that they would give accommodation. We've got a car coming down here, so I'm going to have to stand in to make absolutely certain that, oh, they've stopped for some reason. Okay, thank you. Just making our way up here. I was talking about the accommodation for the respectable poor. It meant that they provided accommodation for people, working class people, who had a job of work and could have a regular income and therefore could pay the rent on time. If they couldn't pay the rent on time, they were evicted. If they were a couple, they had to prove that they were married. There have been rules saying that you couldn't bring alcohol onto the premises. That doesn't stop you from going to the pub, but don't bring alcohol onto the premises. And don't use the rooms for any immoral purpose. Anyway, this was the site of George Yard Buildings. And this is where Martha Tabram took her client, her young private presumably, and we think she may have actually had another client as well who turned out to be Jack the Ripper. Anyway, what I'm going to do is just go a little way and talk a bit about the murder. Now, George Yard Buildings had 40 flats. It was built on 3 levels. And there were many people who were living there. Now, just a moment, let me just take here, just one moment view. As we look forward here, you can see just over the rooftop the spire of the church, Christ Church, Spitalfields. You see that building with the golden cross. I'll be talking about that in another video. I won't talk about it now, but it does tend to feature rather a lot. Anyway, let me just... Sorry, I was talking about George Yard Buildings, and I was saying they used to have the common areas. They were gaslit, and they used to turn the gas light off at 11 in the evening. So after that, anybody returning home would have to stumble around in the darkness. Right, now, Tuesday morning, 4:45, 4:45 in the morning. We had a young man called John Reeves, lived right up the very top, and he was making his way downstairs, down 2 flights of stairs. As he came down to the first landing, he saw before him the body of a woman he didn't recognize. She was on her back, she was lying in a pool of blood. And he was alarmed, obviously, and ran out in the street in order to find a policeman. And what I propose to do now is just shut off, and I'll pursue that in my next video.